Hello everyone and welcome to this episode of Behind the Wrestler. My guest at this time is none other than the man himself, Corban. The one that everybody hates. So thank you very much for taking the time out and giving us your story. Obviously he is a manager and not a wrestler, but I think it's still an amazing story that we can get with the people that he's managed over the years. This is a two-part episode, so this is part one and then there will be part two later on. So the first question is, you've probably been asked millions of times, is who, when and where inspired you to become to get into professional wrestling?
To get into it?
Yeah.
Ooh. Growing up, wrestling was really hard to watch in my household. Parents watched it a little bit when we were kids, but we weren't a big fan of me and my brother watching it growing up. So, I watched it with my grandparents who had Sky at the time, and it was always on Sky, and I watched when I could. And I had friends who would watch it and everything like that. Biggest person to influence me to kind of get into wrestling was... I'd definitely put it down to either Stone Cold Steve Austin or Rob Van Dam. As a kid, not being able to find a lot of time to watch wrestling at home with mum and dad, I'd drop down to the closest Video Easy, something like that, go through the bargain bins, and remember one time I was going through and I found an old ECW VHS that someone had thrown away and Video Easy was selling second hand. Don't know how they managed to get this over to New Zealand or anything like that, but I managed to, it was a couple bucks. I managed to buy it, hide it from my parents, and found ECW that way. Very early 2000s. Loved all of it. I saw a couple of names I recognise. The biggest thing being Rob Van Dam. Rob Van Dam versus Jerry Lynn became my very first kind of instant classic, very technical, kind of masterclass in technical and storytelling wrestling, which I loved a bit. I could watch RVD vs Jerry Lynn, any one of their matches 10 times over without an issue. Never fails to actually, I still get goosebumps just watching it. I've got a couple of the old DVDs and everything like that from Barely Legal and One Night Stand and everything like that. So anytime RVD was pretty much in the ring, especially with someone like Jerry Lynn or someone like Tajiri or Mikey Whipwreck, it was always a really good match for me.
Nice. How did you go about trying to pursue and involve yourself in professional wrestling?
This is a really weird one. I got sent a friend request out of the blue one day by Just Plain Evil, JP, who, depending on who you talk to, whether it's me or whether it's her, she ended up face stalking me because I was chatting to another New Zealand wrestler on Twitter, just casually, just a casual friendly banter. And JP ended up just clicking onto my profile and accidentally sending me a friend request, and I accepted. I was like, cool, someone from the New Zealand wrestling scene. And through that, found Maniacs United. I'd always known about IPW, and I'd watch KPW and Off the Ropes and everything like that, so I had a little bit of an idea about New Zealand wrestling, but never really looked too much into it as far as joining or anything like that. Being from Hamilton and there wasn't really too much happening around here, it always seemed like a bit of a stretch to be like, I want to be part of that, but that all takes part in Auckland and Wellington and everything like that. So it seemed really hard, so I never really gave it much thought, but Just Plain Evil, we got to chatting over Facebook, everything like that, and I started training up there with Maniacs United. Enjoyed the hell out of it, and unfortunately just had to stop due to a mix of my job at the time, working 6-7 days a week. Just couldn't afford the petrol to get up there, and I had a injury, which added to a list of pre-existing sporting injuries from rugby and other things that stopped me from actually training to be a wrestler. But I stayed on at Maniacs United primarily as a ring announcer, and then moved into being a manager from there.
And going into the manager role and managing your first wrestler, what was the your experience that you took away from that?
It was interesting. So at the time I was ring announcing, and at the time I was working in commercial radio. I was doing a Saturday morning show for More FM. I was also doing promotions for The Rock and The Edge and My FM and everything like that. So talking on a microphone was very, it was my everyday job. Very, very easy to do for me. So, just looking out the landscape, I always like talking about wrestling. It's part of the reason why I love it, just the like-minded people. Like, you can literally, and as Kartik knows, you can literally do a whole car ride of people just chatting about wrestling and their experiences and everything like that. It's the best experience in the world. Yeah. So yeah, I just remember looking out the New Zealand scene one day and just being like, there's a couple of managers, but they're not really doing much. I'm just like, there's definitely a market for me. I was keen to get involved somehow. If I couldn't be the wrestler out there in the ring, I'd love to be in there in some capacity more than just a typical ring announcer. So I asked JPE and the person who was booking at the time, which was I believe Mr. Rough Guts, if I could be a manager, and they just both kind of went, you know what, you're great on the mic, we love you for it, so yeah, no, let's do it. So they put me with my initial client, the fire breathing Blaze.
Yes.
Who was a Maniacs United trainee who actually started the same weekend I did. So we knew each other a little bit. I enjoyed that run a lot. There was a lot of fun. There were a lot of stuff. There was a lot of stuff with that run that was happening outside of the ring, but as far as the actual performance inside the ring, working with Blaze, it was a lot of fun because it was unique. Blaze being a fire breather, and he was spitting fire and wowing the crowd, and being a young dude who picked up a lot of in-ring stuff very, very quickly. Had a lot of potential to go far, but outside factors kind of hindered that. But I enjoyed it a hell of a lot out of it. You're out there side by side with a dude who's carrying a big fire torch and spitting flames everywhere. It was something that hadn't really been done in the New Zealand wrestling scene and isn't really around now. So that was a lot of fun for me. It came very natural because the kind of two gimmicks or personas I had for myself in my head as a wrestler, I had two very specific ones, very different ones, but they were both very definitely heelish, very aggressive, very angry kind of people, and I was more than, it was pretty much second nature for me to be yelling at people, telling them what I thought, and getting their reaction out of the crowd. A lot of fun.
And, like you said, you're managing Blaze, who, became the Jackson Shield champion, and you managed him continuously until he was unable to perform, and going into managing him where he stepped into his first ladder match with multi-men people. What was the, going from just having single one-on-one matches to managing him into this multi-man ladder match where a whole lot more different factors is in play?
It was interesting. That ladder match was really interesting. It was fun because it was Maniacs United first ever ladder match. And I always laugh looking back at it because we only had one ladder.
Yeah, we did.
So that was a lot of fun to kind of work around. You see all these big ladder matches in other companies, and they've got 5-6 ladders in there, and they've got all these cool different spots. So I wasn't as involved in putting together that match, but it was a lot of fun listening, putting together kind of like a gimmick style match from a different standpoint than the typical one-on-one or tag team match or something like that, where everyone kind of gets their own little moment and then move on, and then you go to the finish and everything like that. It was a lot of fun. I remember in particular, it was the first time I really had to kind of step up outside of my in-ring persona as Blaze's manager and just kind of go, we can't do this because we have this other part coming up and it doesn't make sense if we do that before this. And you can say what you want about Blaze now, but he was keen to do anything. He had a list of everything he wanted to do. He wanted to get thrown off it. He wanted to get thrown through something. He wanted someone to do this move to him off of it, and we were just kind of like we'll take 2 of those and we'll do it, because he had a list of like 12. Yeah. So like he was enthusiastic, but it was like, how are we gonna build to this point if you've gone through 3 tables and had your leg broken or something like that? You're not even gonna be able to climb. So I think helping him walk through that without him feeling like he was being bullied by veterans, because I think he had all these ideas and they got shut down pretty quickly, and he kind of took that, he was quite taken aback by that. So it was the first time really I had to kind of step up and be like, it's not that we don't want you to have all these cool spots, but we can't do all of them because of this reason. And it was kind of my first step into really being a manager outside of the in-ring persona, and just kind of doing stuff outside of what I typically do in the ring. So there was a lot of fun that ladder match. Finish was interesting.
Yes. It was.
Finish was really interesting because obviously typically you have more than one referee in the ladder match, but Manchester United, New Zealand, limited amounts of referees. So we had one referee, Kartik. I'm more than happy to admit this on camera because it was a couple of years ago now.
Yeah.
Kartik won the match.
I did.
But at the time the referee was knocked out due to my interference, so Blaze managed to grab the shield and retain. So an interesting finish. The live crowd, they hated us for it because they were behind Kartik 100%. They absolutely loathed us, and I remember. Well, I felt we might have been able to find a finish that could have been a little bit. I don't know. I like the idea of it being like Kartik goes over strong. But Blaze still manages to find a way to win. I just felt there could have been some other way to do it, but I didn't have the idea at the time. No one else had a better idea, so that's what happened.
I got screwed over.
Good times.
That was actually a good match.
It was a good match.
Yeah.
There was a lot of good people in that match too.
That's true. Most of those people.
Most of those people aren't even around anymore.
Yeah, they're not.
We had the Bugane.
Yeah.
Jono. John Henry.
Oh, yes.
John Henry. I miss John Henry. He was great.
He was.
Had a couple others in there too.
Yeah. And then going from that ladder match to this match just between Blaze and Kartik for the Jackson Shield championship. Managing Blaze and that going back to going away from the multi-man stuff to back to the normal stuff. What was the two different key factors in there?
It was interesting because that's when we really had to start thinking about character development and everything like that. Like how would Blaze the character after this cowardly way of winning the ladder match? How would he react to doing this in the match? Would he try and cheat again? How would Cam Corban as a manager factor into doing this? How could we get the crowd to get invested behind? I mean, the story was already there. The crowd wanted Kartik to win. The crowd was really behind Kartik, and we had to find a way to really make Blaze look like a proper champion, but also a bit of a softie with Cam Corban helping him. But at the same time, make Kartik a credible champion. And I think those matches were really good. I feel like there were a couple of things in there that could have obviously worked out differently. But the potential was always there, and I guess that's what that chapter of my career will be with Blaze, is just always just the potential was there, but outside occurrences, that's wrestling.
Yeah.
Stuff happens.
And moving away from Blaze to going to your other clients, and you mentioned that you used to announce before you went into the manager role. What's the two different or challenges that you found from just announcing and going into being a manager? Just announcing.
Obviously, I missed a couple shows really early on because I had working commitments, and it was always a struggle in the early days trying to locate people that you hadn't worked with before, hadn't announced before, and hadn't, you didn't know how to pronounce their names, you didn't know. I remember one time getting grilled, I think it might have been by Chad Howard during one of my first shows, for calling the stable of Rodeo Drive. Because I hadn't worked with them as a unit before. I think I'd announced Charlie Roberts by himself, and maybe Chad Howard by himself a couple of times, but I didn't announce them as a unit. So when JPE handed me this bit of paper, to me it says Rodeo Drive. you know. So I said Rodeo Drive, and I believe it might have been Rob, it might have been Chad Howard, Harry, who came out and just ran me down in front of the crowd. It's Rodeo Drive, you idiot! You know, it was a lot of, you know, obviously I never forgot how to pronounce their name again, but at the same time, it was good to kind of bounce off the wrestlers, and that was my first kind of taste of like calling it on, I guess you could say calling it on the fly, where like you can have a bit of fun back and forth banter with a wrestler that's not quite, you know, wasn't supposed to happen, but you know, stuff like that's always, you know, I always enjoy that kind of on the fly, the banter.
Yeah.
So the managing and trying to track everyone down, and was trying to learn, you know, everyone's names and how they want to pronounce it and everything like that. The pronouncing and the actual announcing itself, never an issue with me. Obviously with a radio background and everything, I knew how to enunciate. I knew where to hold for dramatic effect, and you know, I'm a big UFC fan, big fan of the ring announcer Bruce, and the way he's always said it. So I've always tried to put a big powerful kind of inflection, like Showtime kind of deal on when I yell people's names. And I think that's still something I do on my promos today as well. So yeah, you know, you always learn from day one about how to improve, how to get better, everything like that.
And you know, going away from managing Blaze to where you are now, multi-man people, and getting the opportunity to manage the current Maniacs United New Zealand Professional Wrestling Champion, none other than the standard hero Graham Hughes, who has over 18 years of experience, who's been wrestling since he was 15. He wrestled all over Europe, and you know, made his name over there, and came over here, and I was, you know, the Maniacs champion, New Zealand Professional Wrestling Champion, and you're his manager, getting the opportunity to learn from Graham, and finding out that I get to pick his brain with a whole bunch of information. What was the thoughts and processes?
So that was really interesting, because it was literally thrown together like really last minute. I turned up to a show one day, and at the time I was managing Jason Brody. Not freshly paired, we've been doing our shtick for a couple months. And I showed up to the show, and JP was just like, okay, so tonight we're going to be putting you with Graham Hughes. And I was just like, oh, wow, like that's really cool. Like to me, as a manager, especially with Maniacs United, we had a really young roster, and I was kind of expecting to kind of just be stuck, well, not stuck, but like rotate through managing a bunch of these guys as they come up and get older. So the chance to get put with someone a lot more established and as clever and as technically prowess as Graham was very cool. So so I found out about half an hour before doors opened. I went over and said hi to him. Like we hadn't talked a heck of a lot before, but I like Graham a lot. I'd always respected him, and his in-ring work was always phenomenal. So I had a chat with him. I'm like, well, apparently I'm managing you tonight. He's like, yeah, apparently we are. It was just kind of like, what do you want to do? And he was very much like, you know, whatever you feel like you want to do, go ahead and do it. And that's literally like the summary of our entire working relationship. Has been just very relaxed. Not, you know, very rarely has it been like, it needs to be like this, it needs to be like this. Graham goes out, he does his thing, and then my style of managing has always just been very, very relaxed, very like, we'll go with the flow. If what happens out there happens, you know. We'll think on the fly. As far as promo wise, it's like, you know, we want to get these points across, but it doesn't matter how you do it as long as it gets done. And I think his wrestling style with my managing and promo style they just blend so well together. You know, being such a veteran performer and everything like that, he's able to, you know, he can change a match on the fly. He can change the flow of the match. He knows how to work a crowd and everything like that. So a lot of it was learning when to pick my times to get involved into a match, especially as like yelling at the crowd. So early on, I just kind of went out there and did my thing. I wasn't really getting a heck of a lot of feedback, and it wasn't until I got put up with Graham where he'd be like, at this juncture of a match, you'd be yelling at the crowd, because then, you're not drawing away from everything in the crowd, and you're still letting the crowd know that you're there, and you can get a bit of an illicit response and everything like that. And that was a lot of fun. There was a lot of help for me as a performer to kind of learn more. So like I guess I kind of took the role of manager at face value from just what they did at TV. I never really put too much thought into how adding that third man outside the ring can enhance a match, and how yelling at the wrong time can detract from it and everything like that. So that's the kind of stuff that I really learned from Graham. I always love watching Graham kind of go through a match, especially with like a young competitor, and putting the match together, and just watching how like the footwork and the technical and like the wrist locks, the hip tosses, the way Graham flips himself around the ring, and the way he bumps is so impactful. And anyone who's ever worked with Graham in the ring will tell you he'll never hit you with anything. His fists, his kicks that he does, you won't feel a thing.
No.
We had a great match where I was holding someone up in a full Nelson, and was it you? I might have been you. I'm not sure.
I think so.
Might have been Kartik.
Yeah.
Had him in a full Nelson, and Kartik dropped down, and Graham did his big kind of step up enziguri kick to the side of my head. The sound was so crisp and the timing was so great. Never touched me. Came a couple centimeters away, but never felt a thing. And honestly, working with Graham has been the most fun. More fun than I've had in a wrestling ring years. It was a learning experience, and it's a lot different than working with a young person, because with a young person you're kind of the voice of reason. Well, with Graham I get to kind of take a back seat and have my input as well, but also get to learn from a great technical mind, and to be honest, probably one of, if not the most underrated in-ring performers in the country.
Yeah.
Easily.
Yeah,
Easily.
So obviously this is episode of Cam Corban, which is part 1, and part 2 will be released. So if you want to hear the rest of this story, just stay tuned, and part 2 will be coming out soon. Thank you very much for taking the time out to give us the first part of Cam Corban, and then part 2 will be coming out at some point. Just keep your eye out.
Sweet as.
Thank you very much, everyone, for joining us, and I'll catch everybody next time on Behind the Wrestler.